And I'm pleased to tell you that Austin Petersen is with us. He is seeking the nomination from the Republican Party to run against Claire McCaskill. In the primary, he's up against
Josh Hawley, Attorney General.
Josh Hawley, latter boy just sort of rolls off the tongue. Austin, welcome. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Merry Christmas, Gary and Jennifer.
Merry Christmas to you, too. I want to talk to you a little bit about tax reform. The Republicans have a plan that it strikes me as better than nothing, but they don't do a lot about spending. It kind of scares me. Have you had a chance to look it over?
Yeah, I have. Right now, the big fight is it's in Marco Rubio's corner because he's pushing for an extension of the child tax credit. He wants to increase the child tax credit. I totally understand why, because this bill, the Republicans have been promising to cut funding for Planned Parenthood, but we're funding Planned Parenthood and then we're decreasing the child tax credit, or we're not really doing what our principles are in. And not only do we have to pass tax reform, but we got to fund the government, raise the debt ceiling, modify the spending caps. We got to address the health care subsidies, disaster relief. And we got to talk about DACA, the young undocumented immigrants. So we've got a week and a half to do all this, and I'm a little skeptical we're going to be able to pull this all off in time.
Where do you stand on DACA?
Yeah, I think that if it's not your fault that you were brought here as a child, there ought to be some simple path to citizenship. I don't believe in dropping people off back in the country that they have no ties to. So Rand Paul has proposed that what we ought to do is to put them into the path to immigration that we have. There's about 800,000 of these young people, or now they're older. But if we put them in the regular queue, maybe 200,000 of them a year, I think that's a good, fair compromise.
The tax cut bill doubles the existing child care credit, is my understanding, from $6,000 maximum to, now it's $11,000 in the current proposal. Did you just say that They're reducing it?
Well, that was what was originally planned. It's been changing quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. Right now, what I'm reading this morning is from Senator Marco Rubio, is that he thinks that it needs to be extended even further.
So quadruple.
What it says that it's currently set at $2,000 per child in the House Senate compromise, but we're not exactly sure what's going to come out of this. He wants to increase it, I think he said, to 11, but at the moment it's at 2.
Oh, the way I heard it yesterday, the plan had it at 11, but he wanted it at more, but maybe I got that mixed up. But 11 would be substantially more than it is now. But he had sticker shock at the 11 figure because he thought it was going to be over 20, something like that.
Right. The House's draft of the legislation would increase the maximum credit to $1,600, while the Senate proposed a $2,000 credit. And right now this is what the fight is over in the tax bill. But for me, I think we're missing a huge chance at fundamental tax reform. The big question is, why aren't we getting the simple flat rate that we were talking about, the 3x5 postcard? The original broad outline of this tax bill was supposed to offer us fundamental reform, but there's been such a nightmare back and forth between the Senate bill and the House bill that now I think we're missing a huge opportunity to get what I think you and I want, Gary, which is a real simple flat tax. I know you kind of like the fair tax, but at a minimum, we should be cutting rates across the board. There were lots of mistakes that were made in the Senate bill that were passed. I think one tax bracket was 100% taxes were owed because of a mistake that was made. It seems like they're rushing the process, and it makes me nervous.
Yeah, on the upside, in committee, they were hopefully fixing that. When it goes back for the vote, it's filibuster-proof because it comes out of committee. And hopefully they can get enough Republicans on board to make it happen. It is better than nothing. It is not ideal.
It is better than nothing. I will be very relieved if they get it done, too, because they absolutely have to.
Yeah, and the corporate tax.
I agree.
The corporate tax rate was just silly. All right, so there are several other issues that I want to talk to you about. I talked to you before about balancing the budget, and I said that the Republicans haven't addressed the spending. $20+ trillion and growing. And you said, I think the 1% rule, is that what you said? Was your favorite way to reduce spending?
Right, it's the petty plan. Simple, right? Simple 1% across the board spending cuts. 1 penny out of every federal dollar across the board until we can get on the path towards a balanced budget, and then we should have a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget. And it's popular to attack Republicans because they vote for tax cuts and then they vote for spending increases, so they want to increase the deficit. But not every single Republican voted to increase spending. Senator Rand Paul didn't vote for this, so he gets a pass because obviously any spending increase is just a tax increase down the line. And everybody knows the Laffer curve, right? We're going to get more revenue, but I do worry that we're increasing our deficits at an alarming rate. I would like to see spending cuts and tax cuts across the board. And one thing, too, the optics matter. Because when the Republicans come in and they're offering tax breaks to the highest tax brackets, but then they sunset the provisions for the middle class, the optics are that we Republicans don't care about the middle class, and we've got to stop that. We should offer everybody tax cuts across the board. Every single American deserves a tax break, and that's what I'll champion when I beat Ladder Boy and then Claire McCaskill next year.
The 1% rule, does that offset the increased spending in Social Security and Medicare?
It does. So, well, here's the thing. So if we want to patch the holes in Social Security, which we have, we're going to have to increase revenue somewhere, right? And the way the penny plan works is that it allows you to make an equal and corresponding cut to a separate program if you don't want to make a cut to one program. So Congress can discern between one program or another. Say if they want to cut from the F-35 boondoggle, the $1 trillion boondoggle that we have for that fighter jet that can't even outperform the F-16. Well, then you could cut 2% from the F-35 program if you want. As long as there is a total overall 1% cut to spending, then it balances. Then it's in accordance with the penny plan. So an overall 1 penny out of every federal dollar. But if you don't want to cut from Social Security, you could cut from another program.
So we can get rid of
it all amounts to 1%.
So we can get rid of the horsehair subsidy and in its entirety, and then use that savings to keep Social Security payments from being reduced.
Yeah, cut the corporate welfare. That's the thing. I mean, a lot of people they say that conservatives are heartless because they want to cut welfare and they always trot out, the poor and the downtrodden. But it's the corporations that get the majority of welfare, right? So I would say go after the corporate welfare first. Stop propping up these too big to fail businesses and start cutting some of these subsidies to the major agricultural companies, right? That comes at the expense of the small farmers, which is a big issue here in Missouri. We're losing the family farms, and the major agricultural company, they get the big tax breaks. They get the big subsidies. So if we level the playing field, then more of the underdogs can compete in the marketplace. So I would cut the corporate welfare first.
Austin Petersen, our guest, he is primarying. You see,
Josh Hawley, Attorney General Josh Hawley.
Yeah, I know who it is, but I want to call him Ladder Boy. But he is primarying against him. He wants the nomination to run against Claire McCaskill. I think he's a more Republican, a more constitutional Republican than any I've seen.
Well, he just converted parties, though. He was a libertarian until recently, officially, right?
Right.
He ran for libertarian presidential candidate. And
I'd cross
I
party
have
lines.
A question.
All right, go ahead.
Being in the Senate requires, consensus building and making deals and working with others to get things done. Who are your 5 favorite Republicans currently serving in the United States Senate?
I like Senator Mike Lee is probably my favorite just because I cannot remember the last time that I disagreed with Senator Mike Lee. So Mike Lee would probably be number 1. I would say number 2 would probably be Rand Paul without a doubt because Rand Paul is the closest that we have to what I believe. I think Roy Blunt's pretty good. I'm not just saying that because we're going to serve together, but I think Roy Blunt has been very good on the fiscal issues that are very important. Let's see. I mean, it's tough to find good ones. Ted Cruz, obviously, very good Republican, and John Barrasso from Wyoming. Those are probably my top Republicans in the U.S. Senate that I would work with to advance a pro-life, pro-liberty, and pro-Constitution standpoint.
Thanks.
I might point out that Austin is going to be one of the 2 featured speakers at our CC City Broiler dinner next week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Austin will be there. And then we'll also have Stacy on the right. They're both limited in time for their speaking because it's just, I hate sitting around listening to long-winded speeches. So they'll have to make their points quickly. And in fact, I think I think Stacey and I are going to grill Austin in front of all those people. I mean, two talk show hosts hammering you at the same time. Boy, you better have your homework done, I'll tell you.
I'm ready.
All right. Any other question?
Oh, I was wondering how long you lived in Missouri.
Let's see. Combined, I've lived in and out of Missouri. So let's see. I left Missouri when I was 23, and I've been here 33 years. So let's see, about 23, 24. So about 26 of my 36 years. 36 years old. So I've lived in Missouri for 26 years.
And did you recently move back?
About 3 years ago, I moved back. I run a small business that I can work from anywhere, so I decided that, I'd like to pay lower taxes, spend more time with my family, and since I can work from anywhere, I run my business out of Kansas City. And, born and raised and educated here. I went to Missouri State University in Springfield, graduated from Raymore Peculiar High, class of 99. My family's still out in the family farm out in Peculiar. My mother's buried down at Peculiar Cemetery. I was out at the McCaskill workshop, the Cass County Republican Christmas party. I had a big party last night and talked to a lot of old family friends there. And a lot of people said they were voting for me, but most of the people there said they were undecided. They just said that their very first vote in the primary, it's not going to go to Josh Hawley. They said if Josh Hawley wins, they'll vote for him in the general. But because he broke his promises to Missouri Republicans, his big campaign promise about not climbing ladders, they're not going to vote for him in the primary. So I just want to be that alternative, right? And I think I'm a good alternative. I mean, I do have Missouri's best interests at heart, and, I am, again, like I say, from here. And I think I understand the problems that we face. We've got the opioid crisis. We've got problems with our tax system. We've got problems all across the state of people who want to see somebody who reflects conservative values, pro-gun, pro-life, pro-liberty values. And that's what I embody, and that's why I'm looking forward to serving us in the Senate next year.
So do you not believe that, like, Josh Hawley, at the time he ran for Attorney General, believed Dan Wagner was, in fact, going to run against Claire McCaskill, and he didn't plan to run for Senate? I mean, that's, I believe, what he... I don't know if he would say the thing about Ann Wagner, but I know it was widely understood that she was going to be the one running for it, and I don't know if Hawley planned to when he ran for AG or not.
Right. I believe a very small group of elites who like Josh Hawley very much shunted Ann Wagner aside. She had raised $3 million to prepare for this race. I think she was looking at doing it for sure. And the group of people who were taking a look at this from Washington, D.C., Mitch McConnell, Karl Rove, and others, they preferred Josh Hawley. And so they would refuse to, from what I've heard, they refused to invite Ann Wagner to certain meetings and things like that. So they pushed her aside in favor of Josh Hawley. And Hawley had made his promise to the Missouri voters, but when you see those dollar signs coming at you and people tell you that they're going to give you the world and they're going to pick you to be the candidate, and they demand that the donors of Missouri not donate to any other candidates until Josh Hawley decides, I think that kind of pressure is probably what pushed Ann Wagner to decide not to run. I think she would have been a fine candidate. But there's a very small circle of group of people who did not want her. They wanted Josh Hawley. So that's the situation as I understand it.
Austin Petersen, our guest, he is running against Josh Hawley in the primary of the Republican Party, wants the nomination to run against Claire McCaskill. Final question, and then we're out of time, Austin. It is in the news everywhere, talking about internet and net neutrality. Did the FCC do the right thing?
Absolutely. And, what's right is not always what's popular, and what's popular is not always what's right. I mean, I think probably a majority of people out there, especially internet users, they had been fear-mongered and scare-tacticked by the left, by the Democrats, by the corporatists, by the propagandists of the Democratic Party, saying that this was going to fundamentally change the internet as we know it, and that is just wrong. Because essentially what the regulation did was classify the internet like a public utility, like water or electricity, and that's a big mistake. That is offering a centralization of power that any good conservative should oppose. And the internet was fine before these rules were put down by Obama's FCC.
2.5 years ago. Yeah. It just has been in effect 2.5 years ago. So to say that the internet is ending now is just hyperbole.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I mean, and you'll see people out there saying, "Oh, Netflix will cost $200 a minute, and there'll be a Sharknado, and if we don't have this happen, the hyperbole is the hyperbole is off the charts, and when people get really emotional about something, it's a sure sign that there's a problem. And frankly, I think that they did the right thing. I'm actually blown away by what the Trump administration has been doing in terms of cutting regulations. He stood next to a pile of regulations that was, it was like 20 feet high the other day, showing how many regulations he has cut. This is a good move, and I applaud the FCC, I applaud Ajit Pai, and I applaud the Trump White House for supporting them in this decision, because the internet should be free.
So much winning. I love it.
All right. Austin, first off, stay on the phone. I want to put you on hold, but tell them what your website is.
AustinForSenate.com. That's Austin, the number 4, AustinForSenate.com.
All right.